You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life that you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. You know, when we talk about designing the life that we want and building the business that will deliver the life that we want, a critical aspect is figuring out and getting clear on who you are and what you want to accomplish in your business and in your life. And so the question becomes, who are you really? It's a really existential question. Who are you? And how do you unleash the real you? Today's guest is an expert in helping to unleash the youest you that there is. I am speaking with Julie Reisler. She is the founder and CEO of Empowered Living, a life design and personal development company. Julie is a multi-time TEDx speaker. She is host of the Youest You podcast and teacher on the popular app Insight Timer. Julie has a master's degree in health and wellness coaching with a concentration in nutrition and more than 12 certifications in leadership, health, and well-being. So we are in really good, capable hands. Julie Reisler, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thank you so much. I'm excited and honored to be here, and I can't wait to dive in.
I want to find out more about how you help people to become the youest you that they can be. And this is really interesting. You're the author of Get a PhD in You book series and creator of the documentary and course, or documentary. Where did I learn my syllables from? Documentary and course, Hungry for More. You're also on the faculty of Georgetown University. You're so experienced and have so much expertise and credentials. Tell us a little bit about how you got started. What got you interested in helping people to unleash the youest you that they can be?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do this in a condensed version because this could be a full day with Ralph and Julie. I'm gonna just share this, that for me, I came from a corporate setting. I worked for a large Fortune 500 company for over 11 years. And in that time, I struggled with a major breakdown in my own life. I struggled, I'm very open about this, with food addiction, like overeating, eating out of the trash, binge eating. It's a whole other story, lovely but true. And that really got me into a space of desperation and started doing a lot of work on myself. I went to support groups, worked with a coach, did every personal development program known to humankind. And this is about 15 years ago. And, I would say that through that work, I started really what I call excavating my meest me, my most authentic self. And during that time, there was a lot of shift that happened. I realized, that I wanted to really help people to unlock who they are. I realized the marriage I was in was not the best fit, good person, not the best fit. I had a major health breakdown. I mean, all the signs of kind of not living in that authentic lane. What happened was I ended up really, as I said, having this dark night of the soul for quite a while. And it wasn't until I started doing some very deep work, really, really looking at, okay, like you said, who am I? What am I here for? Who do I want to serve? How do I want to serve? What lights me up? And I started asking new questions, looking at life from a new angle. And the next thing I knew, coaching clients, getting into a master's degree program, decided to leave my corporate cushy job and start my own business. And it's something I say that I'm on fire for because I know what it's like to feel stuck, and locked up in yourself and to feel not worthy and feel like you are aimlessly kind of out to sea in the sea of life. And that is not a good feeling. And for me, the transformation I've experienced through all of these various kind of ways of shifting my perspective and mindset and way of looking at my life and my purpose has changed my life. I mean, what I'm doing today, it's a gift. I'm grateful for it. And it took courage to make that shift. And that's a lot of what I do is I love to help people kind of redirect their ship and be like, all right, how do you want to design your life? Where do you want to chart your course? Right now, it doesn't mean because you're going towards the rock that you have to. You can turn around it, you can go back, you can do whatever you want. We have the keys. We really hold the keys.
I love that. And what I love about your story is it's cliche, but it's very true. You turn your mess into a message. You took what you had been dealt with. You figured out how to overcome it. You got a lot of help along the way. You didn't do it by yourself, but you made some distinctions. You made some decisions, and you turned all of that mess into a message that is actually helping other people to become passionate and helping them to master their inner world so that they can crush it at work, at life, in whatever area of life that they want to crush it in. You are helping them to do that. Tell us a little bit more about how do you work with people and who do you help? Who is the best fit for your unique perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I would say is that this has evolved over time having my business. But what I've seen, I've worked with companies, I've worked in the government, I've worked with one-on-one, I've led retreats, events, meetings, all different kinds of venues. What I found, the common denominator is I attract and I love working with I call them like myself, not surprising, right? We teach and work with those that I think we're often similar to. It's these type A, overachieving, go-getter, big-hearted, kind of entrepreneurial type men and women, both men and women. I do work a lot with women, but I've had some incredible men I've worked with as well. And I do find, though, it's that big-hearted piece and it's also the overachieving piece. And when you get that all together in that soup, oftentimes what I've found is that many clients that I've worked with start to feel, that those feelings of overwhelm, aimless, stuck, lacking sometimes of confidence, of purpose, of direction, dealing even with worthiness issues. Like these are kind of this is what I see. One of the trainings that I did in addition to my master's degree and a lot of other certifications, I did one with the Flourishing Leadership Institute, which the program was called LEAF. It's now Exchange. And it's all about using this work around appreciative inquiry, which is really focusing on strengths, focusing on our values, focusing on our gifts. And I was trained as a coach in that same modality. Really what it does is, when we ask new questions, we get new results. Our brain actually shifts. It's like search and respond. So I do a lot around using these types of appreciative questions, inquiries. I've led retreats for, those go-getter women and men. I've led them in Costa Rica. I've led them in the country. I do, day retreats, overnight retreats, events. I try to work with people to really dig deep to kind of to find what lights them up, what feels purposeful. And then from there, we start to design really, what they want to create in their life. And I can go over the framework that I've created. I just know for me, I know what it's like to feel as though you are kind of here on autopilot and not making a difference and feeling overwhelmed and maybe even facing an addiction like food, or it could be social media or shopping or TV or, alcohol or gossip. It could be anything. And I know what it's like to live like that. And I'm really passionate about helping people to live a life of more focus, consciousness, and presence. It's a whole different way to do our life.
I love that. And I think a lot of our listeners who consider themselves rebelpreneurs, probably they are the type A, big-hearted, overachieving individuals who are probably more likely to feel overwhelmed, because they're so brilliant. I always like to blame it on their brilliance because
Totally.
I put myself in that category. Okay. So
Totally. Yeah.
because we are so brilliant at the things that we do and the ideas that we have, we tend to get overwhelmed by the size and the number of the problems that we are trying to solve at once. And where the big-heartedness comes in is you're trying to solve these problems on behalf of other people, and you're trying to do it and scale it in a large way. So that can become overwhelming. That can lead to this feeling of disconnect. And so one of the valuable things I think that you're doing is to help people really refine that process and really get focused on who they are and what's the value that they're going to deliver. But from your work, and like you've said, you have worked with people in all different countries, all different backgrounds. What would you say is the most common problem you see with helping the people that you help? Is there like a big obstacle or a big problem that seems to present over and over again with the people that you're working with?
Yeah, I think, and I look at people sort of from that 360 holistic perspective. So oftentimes I'll find that it's something in the mental realm, thoughts around, confidence. Honestly, you'd be surprised. I worked with a guy who was high up in NASA, and that was one of the things he struggled with was confidence and worthiness. And I see that feeling like I'm doing good enough. There's that. If you're the achiever type, you're striving. If you're constantly in striving, you're not present. You're not sitting and being still with the moment. You're not acknowledging what is. And so oftentimes it's, the more that you do, the more you feel you should do. So that overwhelm, oftentimes insecurity, not enough worthiness. I've also seen this feeling of like the light went off inside. I do a lot around building intuition and building that connection to your what I call, in your gut is kind of like your GPS. So building back that, cultivating, uncovering your connection to your instincts, to what's true for you. Often we're going so fast that we miss that. So that's kind of more the emotional, maybe spiritual realm. And then physical, oftentimes I have people that are, burned out, they're exhausted, they're overstressed, not taking care of their bodies. And so, I would put it in those three different buckets. And for me, I know what it's like. And I just believe so wholeheartedly that when we're running on all of those three cylinders, when you feel like, okay, your thoughts align with what your purpose is, you feel like you're rested and you're taking care of your body, and you realize that it's not about worthiness or not, it's about serving and making a difference and having fun, and you get all those together, that's like a whole different world of performance and enjoyment and satisfaction and success. It just, that shifts the paradigm. So I do a lot of work with people that are kind of struggling in those three areas.
Yeah. And I love that holistic approach, because you really have to have a whole person to be able to address these issues on multiple levels. So when I talk about a big problem, it's hard to nail that down to one particular thing, because all of these things are connected together. Who we are, the youest you. You're not just your thoughts. You're not just your emotions. You're not just your feelings. You're not just your heart and your passion. You're all of these things put together. And so that's quite a challenge. Yeah. Earlier you mentioned a framework. What do you do with people, and what can someone do right now? Maybe they're feeling, maybe they're resonating with this, and they see, wow, this makes sense to me. This explains why I feel kind of overwhelmed and kind of stressed out in my business, in my life, in my wherever. What can they begin to do to begin to see some improvement in these areas?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the names of my books are Get a PhD in You. I have two different versions. One is more for the career track. One is more for that, just kind of that holistic perspective. And my joke was, after doing, 15 years and 40 to 50 grand of work on myself, I remember coming out of a support group, and I said to my friend, oh my gosh, I feel like I have a PhD in myself. And it was like this light bulb. Now, what's so funny is, not to this date have I really created a PhD in this, although I think it'd be pretty funny if you could actually get a PhD in you. I have the my version of that. So the framework, the idea is because we study often everything else but ourselves, and the gems, the treasure box, the real like stuff to value is within you. Every person listening, it's within you. So this framework, I developed what's called the PhD framework, and it's really very simple. The P stands for past. And so what I usually do, and I'm oversimplifying, but anyone can do this. What I would invite you to do is look at your past and look at a high point moment or experience or time when you felt most alive, most like you were thriving and fulfilled and satisfied and joyful. I would invite you to just sort of pick 2 or 3 of those and really dive in. Like, what was it about that time? Be as descriptive as you can, get into where you are, what you were doing, and notice if there are similar themes in those, a couple examples. And this is kind of fun if you have a friend to do it with, or an accountability partner, or at a meeting. That's the P. The H is honoring the present. We often are either stuck in the past or way ahead in the future, but a lot of the gold is right now, right? It's like, what can I honor right now? So you could think of that as, your appreciation, your gratitude, but really, what can you honor about yourself, about your life, about what's working? And specifically, what is working, not what's not working, because we're wired to look at what's not.
That's right.
I'm asking you to look at what is. And then lastly is D, and that's the direction of your desires, of your dreams, really charting out, taking from the past what you honor in the present. And then what I like to say is I usually do a visualization, but if you saw on a movie screen your life a year from now, where would you be? What would you be doing? Get as specific as you can, write it out, draw it out, and start reverse engineering that, and then chunk it up into goals, into months, into weeks. And it could be anything, but that's usually a good sign or point, or gives you indication of what is kind of at the core for you, your desires, your purpose, what's meaningful. And it's been very profound when I've done this with individuals and groups.
I love that framework. And I really appreciate the H in there, honoring the present.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those overachievers where I hardly stop to take a breath and honor and recognize what I've accomplished, because I'm already sketching out a strategy for the next 5 years, So,
oh, yes.
I mean,
yes.
This is something that really hits home. And I think it speaks to a lot of our tendencies in business, in life, in relationships, to really honor the present and not be, as a strategist, I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead on the chessboard, but to be able to do that successfully over and over again, you really have to have an appreciation of where those pieces are on the board right now. So that applies to your life, your business, your relationships, your health, all of those things. This is such a powerful idea. How would working with someone like you really improve our chances for success and getting there faster?
Yeah, well, I do one-on-one coaching, a little less of that these days, but I do a lot with teams and groups and kind of those offsite retreats. And I'll say that, look, what we focus on expands. So when you start to focus on what lights you up, where your strengths are, your values, what has worked and what is working and what's going well, and you start looking at those ingredients, the recipe that you're creating going forward is going to be very different than when you come from a place of not good enough, lack, overwhelm. So even in this model, part of what we're doing is we're changing your lens. We're changing the questions you're asking yourself. And I've seen it with my own life, with my own, ability to just expand quite a bit in a short time. And I really believe, and not perfectly, but when I focus on what are my strengths, what am I most lit up about, when have I been most alive and passionate, that's when you come from that kind of energy, it's magnetic. It's it's contagious. It affects everybody and everything. And so, what I've noticed, I've seen this both. I recently was with a Fortune 500 company in Arizona. We did a full day meeting, and 75 people. We did it individually, but when you do it as a group, you grow as a group together. So that's what's beautiful about this framework is you can use it individually or collectively. And the woman who organized it came up to me. She was like, I don't know what you sprinkled in the room, but people are high. Like, what happened here? And I'm like, it's a natural high. I did not bring any drugs. I don't do drugs.
It's not illegal.
This is all natural. This is not illegal. This is totally natural. We all have it within us. Like, this is called the way it should be. I mean, I'm a big believer, this is the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to feel good and feel alive, and not every moment of your life, but this is, that kind of fuel. If you're tuning in and you're going into getting that kind of knowledge from within and then using that as fuel, that's what you're going to create and attract. So, it's been very powerful. It sounds probably like, wow, that's simplistic. It's amazing though, when you start to apply this, what happens.
Yeah. And it's the simple things in life that we tend to overlook because we're trying to find this complicated solution to a complicated problem. So don't mistake the simplicity of this for the efficacy, for the power of this working in your life. You've got actually a resource that I believe you want to share with our listeners so that they can connect with you on a deeper level and see where this conversation goes.
Yes. And let me just say, by the way, there's a lot more than this framework that I do with people one-on-one or groups. This is just, I think, a great one for people to take away here. And if you're interested and you'd like to get a PhD in you, I have a free book for anyone who would like a copy. And the warning is that it's extremely experiential. There's something like 65 activities. There's a ton of activity and there's space to write. I'm all about like pulling it out of you because I really believe we each have that wisdom. So if you go to juliereisler.com/free book, you have the book. And then also there are some worksheets that I created that kind of go along with it. And then kind of like a value sheet, a manifesto that's there as well.
That's perfect. Well, I like how you get people involved. Information is not going to change your life. Transformation is going to change your life. But you've got to get immersed in these things. So I encourage our listeners to go check that out, juliereisler.com/free book. And we'll have that link on the Rebelpreneur website as well. If you're driving down the road and you want to check it out later on, you can definitely do that as well. Julie, this has really been encouraging that there's hope for people like me. And people like our listeners who sometimes our heart gets ahead of our head and sometimes we run out of gas while we are pursuing our big dream. But you have really encouraged me to take a step back and to honor the present. And I hope our listeners will follow that advice as well and check you out. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me. And I want to acknowledge everyone who's tuning in and listening, because anyone that's in this genre, I know you're a courageous, big-hearted, as I say, badass. And, what I would say for me, my belief is that each of us comes here with a really important purpose, and we have, gifts and talents to share. Everyone does, in a way that's unique to each person. And so my wisdom, or what drives me, is getting quiet enough where I can hear that inner wisdom that we all have, that inner GPS. And when you tune in and you start to really listen to that, I have just seen my life expand beyond anything I've known, and I'm expecting it to continue. And I really believe that that's aligned with our purpose and passion. So, tuning in, taking time, whether it's meditating, breathing, journaling, honoring the present, and understanding that when you listen to your GPS, to your inner wisdom, that will take you, having the courage to listen, which anyone listening I know does that, because as a rebelpreneur, you do that. So continuing to do that and tune in, that's where the real wisdom is, in my humble opinion. And I can imagine a much more collaborative world if we're all tuning in and coming from that space. So that's kind of what guides me, is just helping people to access their highest potential as I do it for myself, and then to create a world for my children and all of our children that really is that's fueled that way.
Love it. Love it. So great words of wisdom. And thanks for sharing your approach and your philosophy with us and with our listeners and with me today. This has been really educational. And I've been speaking with Julie Reisler. She is an author and a life designer, as well as the founder and CEO of Empowered Living, a life design and personal development company. Julie is a multi-time TEDx speaker, host of the U.S. to You podcast, and she teaches on the popular app Insight Timer. She also has a beautiful website with excellent branding. I meant to say that and mention that, Julie, that your website is so awesome. Great branding. Whoever did that, tell them I said kudos. You did a great job. And so I encourage our listeners to go check that out. Check out the free resource. We'll have this link on the website. It's juliereisler.com/free book. To download Julie's book, Get a PhD in You, and other worksheets that will help you to master your inner world and discover who you really are. So, Julie, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all the listeners for staying with us this long. And I just hope that it added enormous value, and just appreciate you and what you're doing. Thank you.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.